Record on this computer. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. It's David and Pat here in the Performance Zone. Pat's been with me the last few weeks, and she will continue to be. Lots of cool stuff to cover. But before we get started on today's episode, we're going to continue on with focus because there was so much information that we had on focus last week. We're going to carry that over into this session as well, just because if it's, it's worth it, right? But before we get started, if you've been thinking about making a call to someone, make the call. If you've been thinking about just popping over to visit them, if you've been thinking about asking somebody out for coffee or just to stay in touch, just do it. Okay, won't get into too much detail on that today. We'll do that another time. But the signs are there, the omens are there, the whatever you want to call them, the nudges, the gentle nudges for you to reach out to somebody. Forget COVID, forget political differences, forget whatever, football team differences, anything like that. It just doesn't matter. If they're on your mind, you're on your heart, pick up the phone, give them a call, and just chat. Okay, on that note. Wow, last week was awesome. Focus, I mean, the last time we met, performance, as we talk about the performance zone, right? Where are you in the zone of performance? And a lot of times it does come down to focus. So that's why we're spending a little bit more time on it. Last week, what did we recap last week, Pat?
Oh, I'm ready for you this week, David.
Fair enough.
Okay, focus on what you really want. Not when it's not what you think you want. Focus on the goal. See it, hear it, feel it. That's the secret. Pardon the pun there. Okay, you'll always have problems. There'll just be different problems. So there's nothing to stop you. All these barriers that you put in the way, all these excuses. Age doesn't equal wisdom. I'm just going through this list here. The one thing that did stand out, because people who've listened to it, is that you can't plant watermelon seeds and expect to get roses.
That's one of my favorite ones, because we were talking about that in the house this week, and that kind of goes into the opening line about pick up the phone and call somebody, right? I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, if you want a good relationship, you got to work at it. But you got to focus on, and you focus on those things that make a relationship successful. And oftentimes, because of the voices, right? Because of the internet, the push notifications, text, the emails, the different news organizations or reports here and reports there and everything that's going on, we get distracted. And with distraction comes disfocus, right? Or, and the more we focus on what we really, really want, and that's, guys, if you've done a goal setting thing, and we talked about this last week a little bit, or maybe you and I were talking about this earlier, I don't know. Sometimes we talk so much, I forget. But that's why we're doing extra. That's why we're doing extra. And that's about these, when people say, oh, I've done goal setting and it doesn't work. And that's where, again, when we talk about feel it, when we talk about, really staying in tune with what you want, that's where to be more specific, align it with your values. Because when people talk about how goal setting only works for a limited period of time, it's because the car is not the thing. The money, while we all want money, right? I love when people say, well, I'm not about the money. Well, then they'd lie about other things too, right? That's the way it works. Because we all want more money. That's why we work. That's why we do businesses. We do side hustles, whatever you want to call it, so that we can have a better quality of life. But the money itself, if that's the goal, that's why it's going to peter out after a while, because the money, that's not it. It's what you can do with it. Well, what do you do with it? And this is where it's important when you do your own values hierarchy. And we can, if you're curious about that, if you don't know how to do a values hierarchy, you can reach out to Pat or myself. We can walk you through that, simply because until you align, you see these people that are passionate, they're fired up, they're always moving, they're running. And you look at them and say, they don't really have any unique set of skills. They're not that particularly good looking. They don't have a great voice, or they don't seem to be a great closer if they're in sales, but they always seem to produce. Well, why is it? Because they're passionate about something, whatever it may be. It's aligning. Maybe it's about, we have all heard the stories, right, of the people who are, well, I grew up in poverty, and they vow to never go back there and to provide for their families and to take care of them. So, the values hierarchy, I don't want to pre-frame anybody, because I don't want you to think, what's important to me is should be important to you. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what your values are and how you fulfill those values with your vision, goals, and objectives. So that's a critical point. That'll help you keep it going beyond 90 days. The people, in my experience, when they go on, they peter out in 90 days is simply because they don't have something compelling that gets them up early in the morning and keeps them up late at night. Like one of my guys he's got a big challenge, and it has to do with his child. She's 7. And he is burning the midnight oil. He's working 3 jobs right now. 3, because he's got to pay the court costs and everything that goes along with that. It's not cheap, but there is nothing that will get in his way of protecting that child and getting more time with that child and making sure that she's not in a dangerous situation, right? That's the kind of drive we want to have for our goals. And that's where when we focus on creating, that's where the focus comes in when you're setting your goals. You've got to have that real focus and then the honesty to ask yourself, is this really what I want? And what values does this of mine, once you get the hierarchy, what values does this goal solve? And that's where people oftentimes, Pat, fall into wow, I guess I really didn't want that. Right? I mean, that's my standpoint on it anyway. That's been my experience when they don't have that. How about yourself?
No, I'm just thinking it's actually it is the mix of vision, mission, and values. Because again, if you don't know where you want to be in the first place, and this is what business owners tend to do, that ultimate, the ultimate goal, how can you focus? I think we mentioned this last week, that if you don't have that goal, how are you focusing? You're just like a ship just going in, hitting the rocks, going anywhere. Whereas, and this is back to that 90-day planning you were talking about, is you have to have that long-term or a specific time frame, basically, I would say. I know people talk about vision being, something it's unachievable, basically, but no, it is achievable. So set it out as to being achievable. But then you're going to have the sort of the milestones along the way that you want to get to, and that's where you're focusing. So those 2-year plan, 5-year plans, 1-year plans, even the 90 days, and for some people it's getting through the next 24 hours, but
been there.
But at least it's like a focus. And one of the things that came to my mind, one of those 4 o'clock moments, and I don't know why, and it came out of that idea of that focus, but also and goals, but also about the watermelons and expecting to get roses. And I was thinking about when you go into, if you dive into a swimming pool, jump into a swimming pool, and you want to get to the other end. We're talking about, people have these, they want to achieve this, and then they don't do anything to do it. To get to the other end, you've got to swim. You've got to learn to swim. So you need to have the education behind you. So you focus on what you need to focus on, but you need the education that helps you. You soak in that knowledge, that's your tools, that's your assets. And then you swim across the pool. Well, you may even have to do it in stages.
Well, yeah, and you might have to start doggy paddling, right? And before you can get into like a proper swimming stroke, and I think that's part of the challenge today too, right? Is that people, they don't want, I have to wait until I can do it perfectly before I get started. That's kind of gets back to the whole focus, the reason that we focus, when you have a focused plan, and I love to use the example of an airplane. When a plane is only on course twice. I don't know if I've gone over this with you or not, right? No, when it takes off and when it lands. That's the only time a plane is on course. And we have this mentality, right? In the world today, the societies all over have this idea a lot of times about perfection, right? The microwave mentality. It has to be this ideal situation to get going and everything should work perfectly. And the plane, like when we flew to the UK last year, we left Albuquerque, even the big flight from Atlanta to Amsterdam, that was the long one. And I will tell you, the plane is constantly adjusting while it's in the air. And that's the thing, when you have a focused plan and you're measuring, you're checking along the way, I better make an adjustment because I'm off course. And that's where it comes in. And, it's not easy, right? I mean, you're going to go through crap no matter what you do. Why not go through crap achieving something with your life, right? Why not go to, or what did Pearl Bailey say? I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better. right? Go, go make more money, go create more. And it's not, like I said, it's not about the money, because the money's not the goal. It's what you can do with it that'll help you fulfill your values. If you want to contribute, this is the big one for me that cracks me up. So many people want to contribute to something, but they have no money. And well, I don't want to be about money. Why? It gets painted as a bad thing. Well, if you don't have money, you can't do stuff. That's the world we live in. We're not living in a world where wampum is, exchangeable, right? We have to have currency, whether it's Australian dollars, US dollars, British pounds, euros. Those are the main currencies, a lot of people that in our worlds are dealing with. So if you want to give to your church, you can't give them a hug. Yeah, go give them a hug. That's great, but that's not going to allow them to feed any children, right? And so set a money goal, but don't make money your only goal, right? Don't make that your focus. It's a byproduct of your focus.
Can I just put a word of warning in there? It is a byproduct. It is there in your focus. It's actually a tool to achieve your focus. I hear, look, I've spoken to colleagues in the past, and even in their language, and I can tell you something about language as well, but even in their language, and they say to us, oh, it's not about the money. And especially when they're sort of in that startup phase, they've got the ideas, they're wanting to do do something, they're talking to me. That's not what I do, but it's in general. And I'm saying to them, yes, it is about the money. You have to charge, if you don't want to, because if you want to achieve what you want to achieve, you give them value, but you also have the return on the value as well. And that helps you to keep growing. And once you value yourself, remember we're talking values here, we also need to value ourselves. Then we end up, being more confident to achieve that goal.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting because it's not the whole, like I said, it's not necessarily, money is we have to keep score, right? And money is a great way to keep score, but it's not the only thing. And that's the challenge. If people have to find that equilibrium, that balance between the money, the goal, and make, again, money's an objective. It's not the main purpose. And it's a great way to keep score. And it's a result, but stay focused on the process when you're in the business. Again, getting back to the whole concept of focus. And you get a good, and once you know exactly what it is you want, now you can work backwards in a lot of ways and create a step-by-step process to achieve the goal. And once when you have that process, then focus, make your adjustments along the way, keep measuring how we doing. And that's another thing too. If the money's not coming in, if you're in business and the money's not coming in, you're not in business, right? You have a hobby, and hobbies cost money. They don't generate money, that's for sure, right? So, but that's the thing. I mean, but the whole concept of focusing on what you really want, not what you think you want, the must-haves in life, because I like to call it collateral success when you focus on a few things, because too many people also want to, they want to get started and they want to focus on everything, right? Oh, I want to get everything. Mark Victor Hansen says, have 4,000 goals. Well, that's Mark Victor Hansen, and he's written, the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, that he and the other gentleman, his name's escaping me right now, but they, when you're at his level and you get to that level, he didn't start out with 4,000 goals. He started out with one goal. That was, I think he was selling jewelry when he was first started. He was in a network marketing jewelry company. And he got better at it. So people have to start with where they are, figure that out, and understand it doesn't matter about anybody else. Don't again, when you're focusing, when you look over here to see, oh, let me see what Pat's doing. Well, then you're not focused on your plan, right? I mean, you can't worry about once you get the plan, focus on the plan. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Focus on your plan, get done what you need to get done. Trust, we were talking about that earlier, right? I know you had some good things to say about that. Trust, and then believe, and then before you see it, you got to believe it.
That's right. Trust with action as well. You can't just trust things will happen. You then have to move ahead. There's action, there's forward momentum.
Yep.
Even that example with the swimming pool, it's forward momentum. It's not going backwards. It's always moving forward. You can be doing the doggy paddle here, and here, but you're always moving forward.
You mean I can't just sit here and just wish it and wish it and wish it, and then all the stuff's going to happen. I'm going to get lots of clients and lots of news, no, that's where I think kind of like the secret, while it opened a lot of people's eyes to certain things. I don't think it went far enough when it comes to the, like all good things comes to he who waits, as long as he works like crazy while he waits. Right. Yep. I mean, you gotta pick up, we use sports analogies a lot, but you gotta get in the game. You got to be playing the game in order to score the winning shot.
Yes, and I'm thinking actually there's another level there, another gear that we haven't considered, and that actually is the gear where you've got the likes of the mastermind, is that you can do so much action and do so much prep work, and then it takes off on its own. So right. Things will happen beyond the action that you've already taken. It's the same when you get into a mastermind group. And I've seen masterminds, for people listening, mastermind is when you get a group of about two people or more come together and you're exploring ideas. Business owners come together, probably with other business owners that are not really a conflict, so they can talk and doing it and explore ideas. And once you come together, what you find is there's another presence in the room, a higher level thinking. And that's what sparks off that sort of those sort of the next level. I was actually in a mastermind group for 3 years, and it was one of those. It was actually in a reaction to a paid mastermind group that none of us could afford to be part of, so we actually created our own. And there were 3 of us, and we met on a Monday evening on the phone for 2 hours between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Woe betide anybody who tried to get in there, to distract us, because our focus was on talking about our businesses, and we did it every week for 2 hours. And every quarter, we'd get together for a day. And there was this lovely library in this old convent, this place anyway, in Beechworth, and we'd go there, and the minute we walked into this library, there was this additional presence. It was there, and so the ideas that we were stimulating between ourselves, it took everything to the next level. So I'm trying to say to you that even on your own, when you focus, you can do so much. You do have to pedal, but there comes a point where the bike takes off. And right. That is an incredible, incredible sensation to feel. I'll go back further, because the first time I experienced all of this was, I was actually convening a project. It was called Appreciative Inquiry, was the technique. And it's about moving forward. It's about everybody coming together, looking at what their strengths are, what the issue is, how they can have a vision about what that result could look like, and then what they need and what they need to achieve it, etc. Be like a strategic plan. And I use that technique as a simplified version. Is so you acknowledge what the negatives, but they're there. You can't ignore them, but you don't focus on that. You focus on your strengths. Right. And we brought these. We started with probably about 8 people in the room from different organisations coming together. And this was actually over a period of about 10 months. I can't see a mastermind for just one session. It doesn't work like that, because it builds on trust, right. etc. over a period of time. At the end of that 10 months, at the end session, there were about 58 people in the room. Because it was generating such, such dynamic and energy. And people could feel it. It's like you just walk into a room and there is this extra level of energy. If you've been through it, you'll understand it. Right. But it's all about, again, it's all about being able to focus and focus what you want to achieve, what the end result is. And this is a collaborative approach, or you're working together to help each other.
Right. And it's interesting because oftentimes people are more willing to focus, or they're more able to focus when they're working with other people. And I know that my experience in masterminds is wonderful, because you get to the point where sometimes the ideas come out and they're ridiculous. right? And comments come out and it's just crazy, but the energy's there. And next thing you know, you've got all these minds and somebody hits on something and then it goes. It really takes off. And for people out there that are thinking, but I don't have any of those kind of friends, go read Napoleon Hill stuff, right? Think and Grow Rich, where he talks about his own mastermind that was in his mind, right? Where he would go back and take people of antiquity and just imagine the mastermind. That even helps. And people ask me, oh, do you believe in all that hokey pokey stuff? I say, sure, why not? I don't, to me, as long as it works and it's positive and if that's what it takes for somebody to get going, do that. Just
I can give,
get, like you said, get moving, get the doggy paddle going in the pool, get started. So at least you're heading towards the other side of the pool.
I can give you an up-to-date version of that. About a few years back, working with a client. I don't know if we mentioned this last time, but it's worth repeating it anyway. Spent 10 years looking for a new venue for what they were doing, additional venue, and just hitting closed doors. So you can imagine how frustrating that was. The CEO or the manager, and she was the manager of an organization, and that's key here, came to me, and within 18 months, we turned all that around, and they actually ended up with a venue over the road from where they were. Now, what happened there? Two things. One is the actual recognition, again, the value that she was giving herself and the organization was giving her. She was actually the CEO. So her mindset was in manager mindset, not the CEO mindset, okay? So that when she was thinking of talking to the local council, for example, the level of people that she was trying to talk to were middle managers. And she was getting, in the system, but she was actually at the CEO level. She should have been at least at that, and a lot of that was her own, her own barriers, her own value system, not valuing what she was, who she really was. Right. So once she did that, once she cracked that, she's gone on to do some amazing stuff. But anyway, what happened then is she then was looking at, well, how do I talk to these people? Well, one is you need to look at in the government terms, there's always a plan. And you always look at the language of the plan and then feed it back to them. But the second part of that was in the focus is, how would somebody else do it? What would blah, blah do? And so she actually created her group of five, the mastermind group, and did exactly that, what you were talking about, is having the discussions in her mind. And even though these people existed and were around her, it was in her mind looking about how they would approach. And these were people who were senior. So she was focusing on, being that senior level person and the authority and what they were doing that she wasn't. So by having that focus, she was able then to change what she was doing. And that helped her to not just knock on the doors, but walk straight through them. So it works.
Yeah, and that gets into the whole thing where we can talk about body language and messaging when you're talking to people. If you're a focused individual, remember, we only communicate 7% through words, but the rest is through body language, tonality, tempo, pitch, and inflection, timbre, and those things. And when you're that focused individual, that calls attention to people too. I mean, you have to understand that a focused individual, it's like a little kid trying to get an ice cream, right? They're focused on the ice cream, and there's nothing you can say to them that's going to get them off the ice cream, right? And more often than not, when a little kid wants something like that, and we tend to be, we're disciplined parents and we don't do that. Of course, we're going to take care of our kids and make sure they don't get that ice cream. Typically, in my own experience, I have to be honest, and a lot of my friends, the kid gets the ice cream. Why? Because there's nothing else in their mind but getting the ice cream. Now, that's kind of a simple example, but when you're focused, athletes, business people, right, that drive, that have things, they have no money, they have no particular talent other than they just really want this thing that they're focused on, and they find a way to get there.
Can I just add on to that when you were talking about the child? And sometimes, I know, if mom says no, ask grandma. It's right. I mean, that child, you think about it, if you feel like you can't get what you want, you look around for somebody else who will give you what you want. So, and sometimes I think you talked about this, about, trying to go for the wall when you could go straight through the screen,
Right. Be flexible in your approach, right? If you can't walk through the brick wall, look for a door. Maybe there's a door there. Just click, you open, you walk through, you're on the other side, right? And that typically,
Yes.
in this case, that's grandma and grandpa.
Yeah. The saboteurs. Yes.
Get to that ice cream.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how we should be working. Focus is, if focus is when it gets to that point where you feel like you're hitting that brick wall, is there another way to do this? Don't give up.
Right.
Is there
Don't be
another way to do
rigid. Don't be
this?
rigid in your be focused, but if it's not working, you got to look for it. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the adjustments, right? When you're on that plane and it leaves, London, and you're flying to the, New York, you're making those adjustments all along the way. Because here's the thing, and I actually had this, one of my old clients years ago was a pilot for the state of New York, and he could fly helicopters or fixed wing aircraft. So his whole career, he was in aviation. And my dad's career was in aviation. But what Michael told me was that if you leave London and you fly to New York and you're off by 1 degree, he said, where do you think you would end up? If you're off by just 1 degree off, it's a 5 or 6 hour flight. Where do you think you'd end up? And I said, well, Washington, D.C., probably Florida. I was trying to be extreme. And I said, let's go to Florida. He said, you'll end up in the Amazon rainforest.
Just 1 degree. Wow.
Because curvature of the earth, winds and everything. But he said 1 degree off and you're that far off. He said, you're constantly making adjustments the whole way. So what you're talking about is the brick wall. It's constantly, that's why we have to be measuring. And people oftentimes look at it and they go, this is hard. There's a lot of work. Well, no kidding. If you're building a business, even if you're not, oftentimes I'll work with people who are not business owners per se, but they're executives and they have their own teams. I say, treat it like a business. That's your business within this. That's your sub business within the business of the corporation that you work for. And you have to run it like that. You have to constantly look at your numbers, make your adjustments along the way to achieve, as long as it keeps you, as you said, moving in the direction of the goal, of moving forward towards achievement of the goal, whether it's swimming to the other side, whether it's getting that first, $50,000 in, $20,000 in sales to keep the business going. That's a lot of the, it's incredibly important to do that. So if you're not adjusting, I mean, we do it in the sales all the time. We're constantly looking at numbers, key performance indicators. Are we having enough traffic going on right now? We're doing some plans with a mutual friend of ours that's over there in California. He's got some things that, it's the same thing. We're looking at the numbers and see where do the numbers have to be to achieve this goal. And it's really plug and play. If you plug in the numbers, as long as if you're focused, you have a game plan and you're taking action, the big word, right? A lot of people say, let me just sit here and the secret, let me just wish it onto the couch and I'll be, and again, I don't want to slam The Secret. It was a wonderful movie. It awakened a lot of people, but it missed some steps. And some of those steps are get up, get going. We see it with kids so much in schools over here, is that if they don't get a straight A, everything's about get the straight A. It's not about so much learning the material as it is do what you have to do to get the straight A. And life's not about straight A's. Life's about learning and pushing and going forward. And sometimes you fail. Sometimes you're not successful. Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work. And I think that, at least here in the US, a lot of kids are learning that they're not learning how to deal with rejection. They're not learning how to deal with failure. I use Gabi as an example, right? 2 torn ACLs, and she's still driving because she's had to deal with adversity. And now she's at the pay. Oh, by the way, she got cleared. She's cleared to practice, almost full practice. She'll be cleared for contact. She'll be playing games in 3 weeks. So finally, after all this, she's going to be playing the games. But she's had to deal with adversity. And more than anything, people, when people ask me, well, is it about the sport? No, it's about what she's learning at 18. from the time she was 15 years old for the last 3 years, she's been dealing with the on and off with this. And this will serve her for the rest of her life. How to deal with adversity, how to make adjustments along the way. She had have to make an adjustment, torn an ACL, had to have surgery. Oh, had to have a second surgery on that to get rid of some scar tissue. Had to make an adjustment. Hey, just got back on the field, had to learn to play. Things changed. The game got to get back up to speed. Oh, toward the other one. Okay, in a different country, had to make adjustments, learning the lingo up there with all those crazy folks in Newcastle.
Gabby plays soccer.
Oh. So no, but she's getting there. But but again, it's the kids, and I'm proud of her for that. It's more importantly, while we love the game, we love watching her play. The thing is what she's learning as a young adult that I don't think enough young kids in her generation learn to deal with. Like, hey, you didn't make the team. You're not an all-star. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't achieve the result because sometimes people are just better than you. Yeah, that's something you have to do. So you have an option. You can either work harder, find a different way, try it again, keep going until you develop the skill set to be competitive. And that require, again, athletics, business, academics, focus is critical.
I'm just looking here at Walt Disney's quote, "If you dream it, you can do it."
Yeah.
And I think that takes it to that level of, and this is great. We all have dreams. It's about, and how do we work? I mean, the greatest focus of all, the story or the lesson to learn is, the richest man in the cemetery. You get to your deathbed and you haven't done what you wanted to do with your life. All those brilliant ideas that they've just been put aside because of whatever reason, fear, distractions, things that we've already mentioned. And all it takes is that focus, that conviction, the values, the driving force. We haven't actually sort of covered that as well. There's a driver behind focus in many cases. We talked about previously about ended up in the pit. Our business ended up in the pit. That actually, you hear the speakers who talk about being in the pit and how they came out of the pit. But what it does in life is give you that lesson of focus, because you can't take things for granted. Once you take the eye off the ball, you've taken the eye off the focus. So
well, that brings up to what we were talking about when we first started today's session, and that is about make the call, right? And I may as well bring that out because we were talking about it right before we launched, and that is I read it and I'll just put that out there so everybody understands the context. Is that a guy that I know on Facebook? Actually, I use a business system. I use one of his products from one of his business. It's a really brilliant marketing system, but he made a post about having a friend that short version is they were really best buds for a number of times. They lost contact for 10 years. They reconnected. He said, I just decided to look him up on Facebook. We reconnected, and he had found out that he was, had for the last 10 years, had been dealing with brain cancer, and so you never know. So don't hesitate. Don't wait. You get out there and do things. You got to get into action. Don't wait. Hey, that was a great idea. I told you about the book idea, right? We've had this great book idea. Someone else is going to have the idea and run with it. The situation with my older brother, who I happened to call today, I hadn't talked to him in a while. And it wasn't for anything other than just, life accumulates. And I'll talk to him. I talked to my other brother who's with my mom a lot more. And I just picked it up. And then he told me he was in the hospital with pneumonia and he was really ill and they weren't sure what was going on. And I'm like, how I would have felt like horrible if I hadn't just picked up the phone, and called him. I wouldn't have known that. And I don't know why. I mean, we figure with siblings, but the point is, what if something had happened and I didn't have that chance to just chat with them, right? So it's the same thing about your business. There are things out there that you have an idea, you have a desire, you have a drive. And if some people are going to tell you it's stupid, they're going to tell you it has no value. They're going to tell you you're a fool for even trying. They're going to tell you, why would you even think of doing that? Who do you think you are? I mean, come on, look at Pat. She talks funny. She's got a funny accent. She's from the North. Who is she? She's a woman. What makes her think she can do that as a woman? Oh my gosh, right? I mean, next thing you know, if that was the case, you wouldn't be, have this, we like to call it the vault. For all of those of you out there, we'll refer to the vault on a regular basis. Pat has a vault that has so much information in it. You know, but she wouldn't have that vault if she didn't put out there. She gets up every day and she goes for it. So if you have something in you, if you have something you've wanted to do, to everybody else, I'm going to use the polite version because we're doing a recorded session here, but that is bug off, right? If there's somebody has a negative thing to say, let them say it. That's their problem. That's their issue, not yours. Get it out there. The market will tell you if it's valuable, and then you can adjust along the way, but get in the game and then focus and work your butt off like crazy, because there's so much going out there. There are people selling supplies from a business standpoint. If you have a business idea, there are Facebook pages dedicated to the Volkswagen Beetle. Did you guys have the Volkswagen Beetle growing up? Right.
Yes.
Well, you had the messed up steering though. It was on the wrong side of the car, right?
No, the right side, left side of the car. Yeah, go on.
Just
right side of the car.
Right. Yours is on the right side. Ours is on the left. But you drive on the wrong side of the road. But the whole point of there are Facebook pages and entire businesses dedicated to the 1974 version of the Volkswagen Beetle, not the new ones, the reproduction that they're doing now, but to the 1974 vision that are lime green, only lime green, and they're making tons of money selling stuff for lime green Volkswagens, and there's like 50,000 people on their Facebook pages. So whatever your business idea is, whatever your thought is, flush it out, right? And again, Pat's got some great tools. What email, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to get some of those tools, like the business, we talked about the template and the business. I mean, it's like a plug and play. If you just follow along with these things, it'll help you design a business plan. How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, there's two things. They can actually find me on LinkedIn, which is Pat Gross, Patricia. Yes. The other one is to contact me by email, support@thecommunityentrepreneur.com.
Okay.
Or you
support
can
at thecommunityentrepreneur.com. If you don't know how to spell entrepreneur, look it up.
Look it up.
Okay.
And then we also, you can actually book us on a calendar, which is bit.ly/TCE booking. It was interesting today, what our conversation is, because my summary is you have to have a goal. You have to take action. There is some education in there. You've got to learn how to, like anybody moving forward, you've got to learn how to do that. Always go forward. And and along the way, you're going to get some help. And that's where the magic lies.
You're going to get some help, but also be prepared to take some lumps.
Yes.
You're going to take the lumps, right? That's just, no, I have to, I'll kind of sum it up as far as on that particular aspect. When I was a young man and I was competing in martial arts, and I was a kid from upstate New York, not even the city. That's why I don't talk funny like the people from New York, they talk like this, right? But I was a kid from the farm country, Kirkwood, New York, right? And who was I to think that I was going to make the Olympic team? Now, I didn't make the Olympic team, just to be clear. I'm not saying that I made that team, but I competed at a high level and I had a dream and I focused on that and I was committed and I got up early but there was always somebody telling me that who do you think you are? There were sometimes people in my own team from New York that would start saying, well, it's nice. Yeah, you're trying, you're preparing. I said, I'm not preparing for nationals. I'm going to win nationals. And then I left that environment and I was at the Olympic Training Center, as an athlete. And years later, I got invited back as a coach. But there were always those people. And then those same people who talked me down, and they weren't necessarily doing it to be mean. They thought that partly is because they don't want to look bad, right? So when you're taking your lumps and you're out there doing that, the point is those people now, I took my lumps, right? And I heard it from a lot of different people, but those people now are like, wow, that was so cool what you did. You were a national champion. You lived at the Olympic Training Center. You traveled around the world. You've been on ESPN. You've done all these really cool things because I didn't allow the voices to tell me I couldn't do it. It doesn't matter. You're not too old. You're not too young. You're not too It's not because you're a woman or you're a man. You're not too thin. You're not too fat. You're not too short. You're not too tall. You don't speak with a funny accent, right? None of that matters. None of that matters. You got a dream, focus on that dream, like Pat said, take the action on that dream, look for the help, because sometimes the help will come in the most unique ways. Get educated. There's tons. You cannot say, I know we joke a lot about these things because of the detrimental effect they have on our focus, but also at the same time, every bit of information in the world is on these things right now. So if you need to learn something, you need to learn communication skills. You need to learn, like Pat said, you can reach out and connect with Pat. She's got templates that will help you set up your business. So all these different things, it's out there if you want it, and if you're willing to commit and put in the effort, and then stay focused on that like a pit bull on a stake, and don't let go.
Can I just say that these templates are not from with my business as a community entrepreneur, but from an activity that I've been doing with a business colleague. So just to clarify that.
Oh, awesome. Well, anyway, they're fantastic, and they're part of the vault.
They're part of the vault.
I wonder if thevault.com is available. You might want to check that out, or maybe Pat's Vault or something like that. I'm telling you guys, the information's out there, and some of the stuff Pat has is in such a concise, usable way, and it's already kind of laid out. But the bottom line is, figure out what you want. Figure out what you really want, not what you think you want, and then make a commitment to yourself. And if you need some help, reach out to Pat or myself, and we'll see what we can do. We'll be back here next week. I don't know if we've picked a topic for the next week. Same time, same channel.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, let's have a look at thinking outside the box when there is no box.
I like it. Thinking outside the box when there is no box. And remember, so thank you guys for being here, whether you're watching live or recorded. Remember to put everything you have into everything you do, because the best is yet to come. We'll see you guys at the latest next week.